Okay, welcome back. I hope you're ready for this because this part of this project scene here is going to take a little bit longer to set up. We're going to have to get a little more intricate with how we work with our shader network here for the floor. Now, first let me explain the effect I'm trying to go for. As you can see, we have a lot of floor to cover. Now, if I click on all these floor objects, you'll notice that it's comprised of different pieces. We have the floor objects of each room, and then we have this long, narrow passage in the hall of floor that we need to texture. Now, I want the floor to have stains and dirt and grime and stuff like that. Unfortunately, if I go ahead and create a material with dirt and grime, say a big old oil slick stain in the middle or whatever you want to put there, that material is going to show up that same exact stain everywhere. Every floor object is going to have that stain. And that, of course, is going to look very dumb because every floor is going to look like it's copied. It's going to repeat. And that's not going to look good. It's not going to sell the effect that we're going for here. So in order to not shoot ourselves in the foot and not have that happen, what we have to do is get a little more complicated with the way that we deploy and set up our shaders. So the floors cannot share the same material. We're going to have to set up different materials. So we're going to do the same thing that what we did with the walls, where we did one material for walls B, one materials for wall A. But we're going to take it a step further, and we're going to have 4 different materials for all of the floor in our scene. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and create a new material, and this one's going to be based off of a Fong. So let's go to create Fong, and we're going to rename this material. We're going to rename this material to floor A matte. So you were probably expecting me to do that. And what we're going to do is set up a simple shading network real quickly here, just like what we were doing before. So let's go ahead and let's plug in to the diffuse color. We're going to plug in a texture, an image, new from file, and the image we're looking for is floor A color. So let's go down. Here's floor A colors right here. So I'm going to pull that one up. Here's what the color image looks like. It's got no stains. It just looks like rough concrete, kind of chipped away, kind of used up, dirty, and whatnot. I want it to look dirty. I want it to have sort of these splattered stains on the floor and stuff. Now, I'm going to do that all within XSI. I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment. First thing we got to do is set up this shader network, and then we'll get started on setting up the stains and stuff like that. So let's go down to floor A, and I'm looking for the specular map. So floor A specular, which is right here. Okay, there's the floor A specular. Perfect. Now what we want to do is bring in ambient occlusion, of course, make this look better, and of course a mixer node. Go ahead and composite this stuff together. So I'll plug the Fong into the base color of the mixer node. The ambient occlusion will go into the color 1. The mixer node will go into the surface, shadow, and the photon ports of the material node. Now, the ambient occlusion. We want the distance again to be set to 5. So let's set that to 5. That's what it's looking like so far, which is not too great. What we want to do now is bring up a bump map generator. So let's go to bump map generator. And let's plug this into the bump slot here. And we want to pull up a bump map. So let's go to new from file. And let's go down and look for floor A bump. Now the value of the bump node, let's go ahead and set that to -5. Okay. Having a little bit of technical difficulties here. Clean that up. Okay, so now we have bump mapping, we have all the standard stuff, so on and so forth. And I'm going to go ahead and apply this floor material to this piece of floor that's down here. So I'm going to right click on floor A, assign to selection. So now this floor here has this floor material And I'm going to do a render region just to show you this, or preview render. Not very interesting, right? It looks very out of place and looks disgusting, to say the least. It's actually something I forgot to do here. A few things I forgot to do. I'll go to mix two colors. I have to change the weight to pure white. And I'll switch back to multiply, and that'll look a lot better. Let's do render preview now. And that looks a lot better. But it still doesn't look grimy the way I want it to. I mean, it looks like concrete, doesn't look perfectly clean, but it looks a little bit too clean. I want it to have some stains right there in the middle of the floor, something splattered there, something that makes it look more interesting. So how can we do that? Well, we're going to use the powerful texture layer system inside of XSI to get that done. Down here you'll see a tab called Texture Layers. Go ahead and click on that with this material A, floor A material selected. This will bring up the texture layers for this material, for floor A matte. Okay, so I know we haven't really seen this before, so you're being introduced to this for the first time probably, and I'm going to go ahead and give you a quick run through of what this is. So what in the world are texture layers? Well, in XSI, materials have something called texture layers that allow you to composite different materials and different textures, different images on top of each other. Kind of like the way that you would in a program, an image editing program like Photoshop. So you have different layers just like in Photoshop, and you can composite them using different compositing modes. You can use lighten, darken, multiply, overlay, all kinds of different things to get different effects. So we're going to use this powerful texture layer system to composite a nasty stain and slap it right on top of this floor A material. So how are we going to do that? Very simple. We're going to use this texture layers panel here of the control of the material manager to go ahead and do that. So let's go up here and we have a icon that says add layer with preset. Well, we want to add a new layer. So this one adds a new blank layer. So let's do that. We add a new blank layer. Here's our blank layer. Has nothing right now. It's completely empty. It's ready to be used. So what we're going to do is pretty simple. In this slot here on the left, we need to plug in a color image. It needs some kind of an RGB input. So let's double click it. And we can see the parameters for it. We can plug images a bunch of different ways. We can open up this PPG, plug here, go to image. We can also click on this little arrow icon there and click on image. That's what we're going to do. So let's click on image. And now we're going to go ahead and go new from file. And the image that we want to go ahead and look for is going to be called decal A underscore color. So here it is, decal A color. It's a Targa, a TGA image. It's not a JPEG. There's a reason for this. JPEGs do not support alpha maps. Alpha maps or alpha masks are supported by Targas, which is why we're using a Targa. If you don't know what an alpha mask is, an alpha mask is basically a mask that tells an image where you can see it and where you can't. Kind of like taking and spray painting using a cutout cardboard with some spray paint. It doesn't make sense, but you'll see what I'm talking about in a moment. So let's double click it to use it. This is where it makes sense. Here's our image. The black areas are areas that are completely transparent and see-through. The colored areas are areas that are not see-through. So that's where the alpha mask comes in handy. So let's close that. Now, what do we want to do next? Well, we need an alpha mask here to apply. So right now it says no mask when I hover my mouse over this square that has an X in it. So let me click on this little icon there, and what I want to do is I want to tell XSI, I want to tell it to use the alpha mask that's in the Targa. Right now by default it's set to no mask. That's no good. I want to set it to use layer input alpha as mask, because this Targa has a mask, and here you can see it. If I double click that, well actually you can't see it right here, but it's there. It's this black and white area. The black is see-through. The white is areas that are opaque and are not see-through. Okay. So now that I did that, I want to change the compositing mode. So I'll switch the mode over to hide reveal, multiply basically, so it looks better. And I'm going to leave the percentage here at 0.5 or 50%. Okay. And I'm going to right click here and I'm going to click on add to layer. Okay. And that's going to bring up these little attributes here. They're perfectly fine how they are right now, so I'm going to leave them alone. Okay, so now we have that set up. Let's go ahead and let's do a render preview of this and see how it looks now. Now, as you can see, this looks more interesting. Now we have this sort of disgusting kind of stain slapped right on top of the concrete texture. If we zoom in a little bit more here, we can get a better look at this. So now our concrete looks older, looks dirtier, and looks much more interesting for this kind of an environment. So this is how we can use the texture layer system to composite dirt and grime and decals. Say I can use the same technique if I wanted to put graffiti on this back wall right here, or to stick a poster, something that looks like an old worn out poster on one of these walls or anything like that. So that's the power of texture layers in XSI. Now what we're going to do is set up a floor B material, which is going to have a different type of stain, so we can break this up and make it look more interesting, more realistic. So let's go ahead and let's set up a floor B. Let's go back to the material manager, switch back to the render tree by clicking on this tab down here. Okay, here's the floor A material. Now the floor A material is exactly identical to the floor B material. It even uses the same texture maps and everything. The only difference is the texture layers. So what I'm going to do is right click and click on duplicate material, and now I have to rename it. Okay. And what I'm going to do is change this. I'm going to change it to floor B material, or matte for short. And it's the same thing, same texture maps and everything. The only difference is the texture layer. So let's go over here to texture layers, and everything's already set up for us. So all we have to do is change the actual image that's plugged in here. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to go to image. I'm going to go to new, from file. Now this decal that I'm going to use is going to be called decal B. So instead of decal A, we're going to use decal B color Targa, or TGA, and it's a different stain. See how it's a different type of stain? That'll help to make each room look different, because there's no way that in real life we could have the same exact stain on a floor in two different rooms. I mean, that just doesn't happen. So let's go ahead and close that. And it's already got the setting set up to use the layer input alpha as the mask. So everything's already set up, so we really don't have to do anything different. The only thing to do would be to actually apply the floor B material to any floor B objects, or any objects that we want to be floor B. We'll do that in a moment though. We're not going to do that right now. We'll do that afterwards. The next thing to do is to set up a third material to add even more variation, a floor C. So let's take floor B, let's duplicate the material, let's take the new floor B duplicate, rename it to floor C. Okay, now it's the same exact texture maps and everything from before. The only difference being the decal mask that we're going to use. So let's go to texture layers, let's go and click on this little arrow icon to modify the input, click on image, go to new from file, and now we're going to look for decal C color, and it's going to be a Targa, of course. So decal C color Targa, there it is. You can see it's a totally different stain from the other two, from decal A and decal B, which is going to give us good variety here. Okay, so now we have floor C set up. Now we have to set up another material. The hall floor needs its own material with its own stains. So we're going to go ahead and and do that. Now the floor hall is going to use a totally different texture maps. Let's duplicate the floor C. So hit duplicate, rename it. We're going to rename this one to hall floor mat. Okay? Alright, that's good. Now we need to change the texture maps because they actually are supposed to be different. So let's change the color, new from file, and let's go ahead and look for floor hall color. So go down, here's floor hall color. I want to go with the JPEG. So floor hall color JPEG. There we go. Looks the same as the other one, only this one has some of the seams painted out. So this one's gonna match the UV mapping of that floor correctly. Let's go to the specular. We have to change that one as well. So let's go to new from file. Let's go down to hall floor, or floor hall I should say. Floor hall. Floor hall specular is the one we're looking for. Now the next thing that we want to do is the bump map. So let's change the bump map. Let's go to new from file and change it to floor hall bump, which should be around here. It is floor hall bump JPEG. Okay, so that's done. Let's hit F6 to refresh this, clean it up. Okay, now the next things to change is texture layers. So let's go to texture layers, and we're going to change the texture layer image. So let's click on the modify input. Let's go to image, new from file, and the image we want to look for is going to be called floor hall decal A. So look for floor hall decal A color targa. So here it is, floor hall underscore decal A underscore color targa. Pretty big image, 16 megabytes. It's a large size, so it looks nice and detailed. And here's the stain. This stain looks totally different to the other three materials, the floor A, floor B, and floor C. So now we're going to have a lot of variety and a lot of difference. The downside to doing it this way is that it takes longer to set up the materials and you need more materials to achieve the effect. Obviously, the positive side is your scene is going to look a lot better than another scene that would have repetitive textures over and over again. Because again, we can't have the same stain over and over. Okay, there we go. Now we have our different floor objects. So now it's up to us to assign different floor shaders or different floor materials to the different floors. So let's go ahead and let's do that. Now we have material A, or floor material A, assigned to this floor right here. Now we know that the hallway has to have the hallway material, so let's go ahead and do that. Select the hallway, switch this back to render tree. Let's pick the hall floor material. Right click, assign to selection. So there we go. There's our hall floor. If we do a render preview here, now we see that we have these stains on this hall floor that are totally unique. They're not repeated in any of the other floors in this scene, which obviously looks good. Okay, now all we have to do is assign the other floor materials to the other floors. Now you're going to notice something. We have a floor A, floor B, and a floor C. That's 3 different floor materials. We have 6 floors that we have to place that on. That means that each material is going to be repeated twice. Now there's a reason for that, and reason is laziness. There's really no point in me wasting your time setting up a floor D, E, and F. So each floor has a different material. Now that you see the whole workflow of creating these different materials with different decal stains, you can go ahead and do that on your own. So there's really no point in having you sit here watching me create 3 more materials that aren't even really necessary. So yeah, the materials are going to repeat, which kind of goes against the whole principle of creating different materials. But this is just to give you the idea of how to go ahead and do this and get it done. Okay? So next thing to do is to set up the different floor materials. So what I'm going to do is select this floor here, and hold down shift and select this floor here. Go back to the material manager. I'm going to assign floor C to those. So assign to selection. So now those two have that floor. Okay. I'm going to take this one here and I'm going to assign it the same material as the one from this floor over here. To do that easily, I'll go up here to material, assign material, then XSI will ask me to pick which material I want, and I'll pick the material from this object. So that copies the material from this object to this one. It doesn't create a new material, it just applies the same material to this object I had selected. And then finally, last but not least, we need to select this floor, hold down shift and select this floor. We're going to select floor B, the floor B material, and assign that to selection. Close the material manager and we're done. Now I have these memo cams up here, so if you click on these orange buttons, it'll take you to different views of this scene here, so you can do different renders. So for example, you can do a render, a preview render of this angle, this camera angle. And we can see what this looks like rendered from here. So you can switch angles, keep the render preview window open so it updates automatically. And there we go. We can see how we have our kill house. It's kind of dark, kind of gritty, kind of dangerous looking, and it is a pretty dangerous place, especially if a SWAT team kicks that door down and comes in after you. That would not be good. Okay, so we got some nice contact shadows. The ambient occlusion's working fantastic. Our light bulbs look like they're turned on and brightly lit. Not too bright. We don't want this room to look too bright. It's supposed to look nice and gritty and dark. There's our eerie hallway with some lights that don't work. Somebody should probably fix that. Okay, so there we go. So we're done with this scene. Let's have a look at our material manager here. We can see we created quite a number of materials to complete this project, this scene. And each of these materials has its own kind of personality with in terms of its shader network. All these shader networks, some of them we duplicated, some are different, some cater to special circumstances, and we can see how we can use the nodes in XSI to create some pretty powerful and pretty interesting shader networks that give us some really cool effects, like the effects that we achieved during this lesson. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you really liked setting that scene up as much as I enjoyed creating it and showing you how to make it look the way that it does. Okay, so that's going to do it for this lesson. And the next lesson we'll work on some architectural visualization stuff. So we're going to go from dirty, gritty, grimy, and dark to brightly lit, clean, nice architectural surfaces. So I hope to see you there.